It's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 4th of December, 2019. Good evening and thank you for tuning into the English edition of Ora News. My name is Oliver, bringing you the only daily update of the local Albanian news translated into English. Up first tonight, the National Theatre building has not been affected by the November 26th earthquake, leaving not even the slightest trace of damage to the interior plaster. Rather, this facility is being used to collect aid for citizens who have been left homeless after the seismic aftershocks resulting from the 6.4 earthquake. But unlike the National Theatre, which has long been contested by the government who seeks its destruction, the earthquake has not spared other institutions. The Assembly suffered damage from the earthquake a week ago, as did the Prime Ministry, both being considered minor. The Assembly received the most damage both inside and outside the building during the earthquake on November 26th, and even from the previous one on September 21st. But the leaders of the institution have taken additional measures, as working groups are now repairing the damage. Meanwhile, the building of the General Directorate of Customs was declared a no-go zone and deemed necessary to be evacuated. According to inspectors of the construction institution, the facility has suffered major structural damage. The management of this institution currently has taken all measures to evacuate employees to other buildings. The transfer of servers to the National Information Society Agency offices was also carried out, as well as the relocation of key sectors near available offices. Next up tonight, a dwelling in the Frescu area, which housed more than 50 families before November 26th, suffered so much damage that only 6 families remain as they don't have anywhere else to go. They say the building is uninhabitable but cannot get an appropriate response from the authorities. The administrator of the high-rise building does not think so, however, and argues about the viability of the building. A different appeal comes from the owner of a building in Combinat, which has been deemed so bad and forbidden to enter, rather. Meanwhile, at building number 15 in Studenti, residents there say there are no damage whatsoever. Authorities seem to disagree. The capital and the villages surrounding it have incurred considerable material damage, while the fear of another seismic shock continues to be present in the minds of citizens who still have not yet received official documents to prove the sustainability of their dwellings. Moving on now, teaching in Tirana, Durrës, Vora, and Corbin will start once again on December 9th. The Education Minister, Besa Shahini, announced today the postponement of another 5 days as inspections and repairs to some schools that were damaged by the November 26th earthquake have not yet been completed. There are no other schools in Tirana besides Pesa that are completely out of order. Classes in Tirana start on December 9th. As for kindergartens and private schools, we must receive confirmation from the building institution so as to ascertain their safety. For the schools that may not be ready by December 9th, we have plans to move students to other schools. We have even provided transportation in rural areas for any school with structural problems. The owners must bring the plan of the students' resettlement, said Besa Shahini. As for the municipalities of Leja, Mirdita, Kamza, and Kavaya, teaching is set to begin on December 5th. The Minister of Education, Besa Shahini, said that after the September 21st earthquake, all the damages were verified and repaired, but the November earthquake was even more devastating. The ministry has decided that December 8th, which is Youth Day, should not be declared a holiday on the 9th because of the loss of school hours, while from the 7th to the 8th of December, there will be another announcement regarding the relocation plan and the time at which private schools will be reopened. Construction permits have declined during July to September after a period of increases. According to Instat data, in the third quarter of 2019, a total of 293 building permits were approved for new buildings, up from 343 permits approved in the third quarter of 2018, marking a decrease of 14.6%, or 50 permits less in total. But despite this, it is worth noting that the construction area is in fact larger. The area approved for the building permits for new construction sites approved in the third quarter of 2018 has increased by more than double. The approximate value of construction permits approved for buildings and civil engineering projects in the third quarter of 2019 is 25.6 billion lek, up from 15.2 billion lek approved in the third quarter of 2018, marking an increase of 68%. However, the capital continues to have the highest number of building permits. From July to September alone, the capital has received over 108 permits, or 4 permits more compared to the same period of time in the previous year. Meanwhile, the 3 cities that have received the least amount of construction permits were Shkodra, Berat, and Gjirokastër. A week after the earthquake, the capital seems to be returning back to normal. Despite the typical daily routines, the November 26th event remains the topic of every conversation. Strong shakes last Tuesday caused panic among citizens, many of them even leaving their dwellings for a few days to stay away from Tirana. 1 week after the tragic event, they say they feel at ease, but fear the return of even more earthquakes. Being in a serious psychological state, many of them did not hesitate to knock on the doors of psychiatrists to seek help. Dr. Nelly Demi appeals to parents to take care of the children who have experienced the earthquake. Transitioning out of a state of anxiety and fear can take time, but doctors say everyone should return to their normal functions and duties. In such events, according to health experts, it is important to stay calm and properly manage your stress. The aftermath of the November 26th earthquake that caused a tragic death toll and significant material damage has been felt in Shkodra too. About 50 families over the past few days have requested an appraisal of the premises due to the damage found. This has led to the task force to inspect the areas those families have called attention to, such as a high-rise building in the Rus neighborhood. We filed a complaint due to the regional offices and set up a working group with all the experts in the municipality of Shkodra. They will do all the verifications and pass it on to the civil emergency staff at the municipality, said one resident. From the preliminary findings of the task force consisting of construction engineers and architects, the most affected are the private dwellings built before the 1990s. Most problems have been noticed in private dwellings because they are built before 1979. Which do not have columns, said another resident. Continuous earthquakes have created an atmosphere of fear and panic among many families, so they are awaiting the certificates of the buildings in which they live. And finally tonight, NATO leaders met in London on the second day of the summit, marking the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the military alliance. Discussions among the top 29 officials, including Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama, focused on terrorist and technological threats, relations with Russia and China, Turkey's role in the alliance, and even expenditure plans. Their decisions are to be formalized in a joint statement later on. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said in a statement at the opening of the summit, quote, "History tells us that peace should never be taken for granted. Even 70 years later, we are committed to NATO, this giant solidarity shield that now protects 29 states and approximately 1 billion people." The year-end meeting is being held under pressure from divisive statements from countries such as France, whose president has demanded that the alliance's response be improved. The phrase used by Emmanuel Macron, that NATO is currently brain dead, was reprimanded the day before during a meeting he had with the American President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the organization's chief, Jens Stoltenberg, has said countries still have unity in addressing the military challenges facing the world. And that's news across the country today. Thank you so much for watching our English edition this evening, and be sure to join us again every Monday to Saturday at 6 p.m. for the latest news from Albania. Once again, on behalf of Ora News, thank you and have a good night.